South Point Surveying and our other ideas, but for her to come in, we would have to do a CUP and everything, but just to make it more general, we're looking for both of us to move in.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. All right, third and final time, those wishing to speak for or against this proposed request. Seeing no one move in that direction, we will turn it over to council for questions, comments, concerns. You have a question?
So the zone change is for neighborhood services?
No, the zone change is for general business. Okay. Planning and Zoning Commission, Martin or Lawrence, you might want to reiterate what and how they voted.
Yes, sir. So I don't recall the specific vote. Martin will answer that. However, I would say that because Planning and Zoning Commission voted to downgrade to neighborhood services, it will take a supermajority of city council to up that from NS to anything above NS. So with 6 people here, it will take a unanimous vote to get to that tonight. I'm sorry, with 7 people here, it will take 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
There's 6 voting.
Yeah, with 6. It'll take 6 people. It would have to be unanimous.
That's what I needed to hear. Thank you.
Right. Thank you for that. Mr. Kamkar?
Thank you for this diagram, by the way. This is actually super helpful. Appreciate that. Is there any architectural control or any other requirements that are going to come on with this? I'm very aware that it's a very residential area and the use is not very residential, and I understand why the remnant item makes complete sense. And I thought that's pragmatic from the previous developer, but is there anything to dictate anything on how it's going to look?
To answer that, Member Kamkar, the property fronts out onto Pearland Parkway, and Pearland Parkway is in the Corridor Overlay District. So the Corridor Overlay District requires some articulation on the building and a certain level of transparency with windows, but there is no material selection that is enforceable right now.
If they go to neighborhood services, are they going to have to do any kind of screening or any other items, greenery, things of that nature?
Only the normal buffer requirements for the adjacent residences.
And assuming the applicant is aware of those requirements?
We've had a pre-development with the applicant where they presented a similar site plan and received all of staff's comments.
Fully aware, yes, sir. And the general idea is to have more of a brick facade, but I understand that this is in the overlay district, and it'll be fully complied. I live and work in this neighborhood. I want it to be beautiful as well. So
People are going to know it, and they'll let you know it.
yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
Just real quick, are you aware of our tree ordinance?
Partially, but I know that there's a ratio of how many trees need to be in there, but there is a 25-foot buffer zone that's about.
Do you have any heartburn on that? Has any heartburn on that issue been relayed to the staff in those pre-development meetings?
None. I don't have an issue with planting multiple trees.
Living in that subdivision next door to it, I don't believe there's any protected trees on the property.
Okay. Just
And I'm more than happy to do it.
no, just asking for posterity. So, all right. Appreciate a small business owner wanting to continue to invest, and you have to live close by. I don't think you'll let it go to pot. So excited for you. Thank you.
Mayor, if you don't mind, Martin, in neighborhood services allow for doctor's office or health offices? I thought they did. Jones? Oh, gyms. I thought you said Jones.
The question is the gym.
Yeah, gyms
I
are
thought
a
he said a gym with the
CUP.
health aspect.
No, gyms require a CUP and a neighborhood services district. And that's something we have on our list to change. I think the main concern here is just general business is such a wider, heavier, intensive category for a smaller property isolated by more residential areas. So like auto parts, auto-focused stores could go here under general business. And so it just kind of allows a higher density of use.
right? That small piece that backs up to all those homes, and out of, you know, the super majority aspect, I thought the health part of the gym is what he was concerned with, not the gym part of the gym. Thank you.
Fitness center.
John or Martin, just to clarify that, so if it went neighborhood services as the planning and zoning, office type uses, I would imagine the surveying office, those types of things would be allowed by right. It's
Correct.
the gym that would require a CUP?
Yes, and it currently would. It's the same thing that when we went over that one on Broadway on Old Town, Iron 24, the same issue was, I think we all agreed it was a fine fit. It's just one of the old CUPs that hasn't been corrected yet. And it's on our list to take forward as we do the UDC. So that is a potential, you know, process that we'll have to go through for that use. But I think based on the added protection level to the neighborhood, it's worth it.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Barry?
That was my exact issue with this whole deal. By going to neighborhood services, now there's going to be a whole new process that has to get kicked off to do the CUP. And if the owner has gone through this much trouble to kind of do this preliminary layout for us, what's your timeline for starting construction?
I would say within the next, I want to really break ground within 12 months after contract, and we should be doing a contract after the.
Yeah, by then we'd have to have all of our permitting, our UDC update in order to avoid the whole entire CUP process. You know, it kind of goes back to my whole thing of, you know, it makes sense to me we have two businesses that are currently in Pearland. You know, they want to merge their businesses to own a piece of property in Pearland, to create more property value in the city of Pearland towards the city of Pearland. I don't see the point in making them have to go through the CUP process. I think it's just a little bit more cumbersome for them. And then in the spirit of doing business with the city of Pearland and making it a little bit easier, I'd be fine with the current zoning.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Mr. Camcar? You have, no. Carbone?
Yep. Thank you, Mayor. I think P&Z got it right for this parcel. I think neighborhood services fits better. When you look at the list of permitted uses by right, if it went straight GB, I think the neighborhood, both neighborhoods would take issue with that. So I'm a fan of going NS. If the UDC is updated by the time you want to move a gym in, then you can. If not, the CUP process will take you 30, 45 days. But I think it gives us that protection for the neighborhood next door.
I'm supportive of a member of Carbone's comments, and I'm gonna trend that way.
I'll add to what they had to say. I've had multiple residents from the Oak Brook section right across the street reach out to me in regards to what would be there and their concerns that were. So as far as the neighborhood services, I'm in support of that. Not to restrict y'all, but just to be able to have a little bit more control for the neighborhood that you'll be in their backyard of. So that's where I'd be.
Any other questions, comments? You know, as somebody who lives in Town Lake, my suggestion is a passage, second reading to go to neighborhood services. I would come in and get the CUP. You've got the makings of a site plan, so I think you know a guy that can put a site plan together. So I would do the site plan, and I'd come right back in with CUP before you spend any other dollars down the line. Get it locked in. You do have 12 months to pull your permits and get going. That fits within the timeline of what you're talking about. So I would do that immediately and come back in. And to what they're saying, I think most of the residents would rather, it's not a residential piece. I mean, as much as somebody would love for, you know, that to be a residential home, it's not a residential tract anymore and hasn't been since it was left out. Or Renee would have figured out a way to put 3 houses on it or 4 houses on it. And so, yeah, so my advice would get right back in here and get the CUP locked up while you got a council that's supportive of what you're trying to do.
Yep, perfect. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, any other questions, comments? With that, we'll close the, Mayor Pro Tem.
So when we have the vote, we're voting for,
Well,
no.
when we go
As
to
it
it,
comes-
we'll have to amend from GB to NS.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Because you're the
Whoever's
one
putting it
making
on the table can put it on the table as NS.
We can put it on as NS. So with that, we close the public hearing. With that, we'll move to new business item number 2. Mayor Pro Tem, would you place that on the table as neighborhood services?
You mean number 3?
Number 3, excuse me.
All right, consideration possible action, first reading of ordinance number 2000M-251, making it with neighborhood services. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. We've had staff report, as well as questions, comments from council. With that, Madam Secretary, we'll call for the vote.
Mayor Pro Tem Koza,
Aye.
Member Carbone,
Aye.
Member Kamkar,
Aye.
Member Cade,
Aye.
Member Barry,
Aye.
Member Patel.
Aye.
The motion passes 6-0.
Awesome. Thank you for that. We wish you well. Thank you for being here tonight. With that, we will, before I do, everybody in the room, I guess you see we have some of our Boy Scouts here today. We want to thank you guys for coming out. They're here not for their citizenship badge, but to get their communication badge. So part of their hope tonight was this is a perfect process tonight. They couldn't have picked a better night to be here because of the public hearing process. Have something on the table, have people kind of for and against and talking through it. You couldn't have had a better night to be able to do that. But we always love to have our scouts come out. It's a great program here in the Pearland area. Tremendous number of Eagles that come all the way up. My encouragement is go all the way to Eagle. And so it'd be a great opportunity to do that. With that, we'll turn to public hearing number 4. Martin, last time.
Thank you, Mayor. So for public hearing number 4, this is a request by Prasad Maragrani of Petrichor Technical Group, LLC, applicant on behalf of Kashif Kabani, owner, for approval of a conditional use permit for a gasoline station within the general business district. This is approximately on 0.8583 acres of land with the general location of 4109 Manville Road. So again, showing the aerial and zoning of the property, you can see the general business that it currently is, and surrounded on both the north and the east by SR 15, suburban residential with 15,000 square foot minimum lot size. This is within a minor retail node for the future land use plan. And that minor retail node is generally for major intersections where we expect for commercial development to take place at the hard corners. Specifically looking at the site, you'll see it has some undeveloped property and then a single-family residential just to the east. And then on the opposite corner is property within the city of Manville. Taking a look at the actual site itself, you'll see that the prior gas station has been demolished and we have a pad site. And then to give you some additional history, this had a gas station and convenience store developed in 1984, was annexed into the city in 1997, and then platted in 2020. Where the City Council had previously approved a gas station in November of 2020. That prior CUP expired in November of 2021. And then a commercial permit for the gas station was submitted in July of 2022. And at that time, staff let the applicant know that a new CUP would be necessary due to the expiration of the prior CUP. The gas station was just demolished here a couple months ago in 2023. So this is the proposed site plan. You can see that they've shifted the building to face onto Bailey Road. And then this is the proposed landscape plan. where you can see the residential buffers along the north side of the property and along the east side. Here are some renderings that they have provided of the site. And you can see an additional aerial site rendering. And then a rendering just of the building with the canopy removed. And again, of the with the site and the canopy removed. So looking at the density map for the gas stations, you can see that there are 2 within 1 mile. One of those is outside of the city of Pearland, and then 6 within 2 miles. Again, one of those being outside, and then 13 within 3 miles. And when you get out to that far of a range, there are 2 that are located outside of the city of Pearland. So staff's analysis on this, this meets the criteria for approval and is consistent with the comprehensive plan. We had some additional recommendations pertaining to the materials for the facade, the fuel canopy, and then the dumpster enclosure. Those recommended conditions end up reading on the screen to have the exterior building facades be developed in substantial conformance with the materials as depicted, to have the columns supporting the fuel station canopy be wrapped with a masonry material that is consistent with the architectural elements of the principal building. Then the dumpster enclosure shall be made of the same material and primary color as the main building. And just to identify, the dumpster enclosure is on the Manville side. So having it with the same material helps to make it blend into the site and not be quite as much of a distraction, which you can see that dumpster enclosure shown on the site plan itself. So afterwards, we recommended approval, or staff recommended approval of the conditional use permit. Again, this went to the August 7th Planning and Zoning Commission. From there, there were some adjacent property owners discussing privacy, drainage, and safety. Afterwards, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of the CUP with a vote of 4-1. They added an additional condition to have the required 6-foot masonry wall upgraded to an 8-foot wall. And that was added as a 4th condition for approval. And then the only dissenting comment was from Commissioner Dansby, who discussed that the additional condition was not a part of the original CUP. So that was his dissenting opinion from the rest of the P&Z. With that, I'll pass back to you, Mayor.
Thank you, Martin, for that. Is the applicant present? All right, do you have a presentation? Okay, we may have some when we get to that point. Thank you for being here tonight. With that, we will open it up for those wishing to speak for or against this proposed request. We do have the 2 citizens that did sign up to speak. They can do that during the public hearing now. So I know both Fridays are here. Both Fridays are here on a Monday. How's that? Do y'all wish to speak now? Yeah.
All right, so Diane Friday, if you'd go up to the podium. You have 3 minutes. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
All right, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Diane Friday. I live at 7026 Heron Lane. It's the property directly to the east of the property in question. On some of the diagrams, it's located on the top. We brought several concerns before the Planning and Zoning Committee, and we were essentially told it was a station before and it can be a station again. I'm afraid that this point of view overlooks some very important points. The original gas station was built 40 or so years ago, and a lot has changed during that time. Our building codes and regulations have changed. The size of convenience stores have changed. They're bigger now. They have more pumps. As the gentleman on staff said, at the previous lot, 2 acres is small for general business now. This lot is less than 1 acre. I'd like to focus, however, on the scientific research that we now have on the hazards of fuel vapor. Fuel vapor contains chemicals which are hazardous to our health. One of these is benzene, which is a known human carcinogen, and it is especially associated with cancer in children. One particular study in 2018 looked at benzene levels in the atmosphere around a selection of United States gas stations. They measured hazardous levels of benzene at 164 feet away, or 50 meters, from the center of the properties they studied, and sometimes that pollution went up to 525 feet away. The previous station on this lot had pumps that were approximately 164 feet away from our property line. So in that case, most of the days, benzene pollution would stay on the gas station property. The new station has moved the pumps. There will now be a 25-foot landscaping barrier, and then the pumps right there on our property line. That puts almost our entire backyard in the 164-foot range where these hazardous levels were measured. On our side of the fence, directly squarely in that range, is my children's playground. It's my garden space, and just beyond that is where our chickens play and live, and we also co-host our homeschool co-op and do outdoor lessons at our home. I cannot in good conscience allow my children or my children's friends to play in an area where I know there are cancer-causing chemicals in the air. It is time to retire this once a gas station, always a gas station precedent. It is time to set a new precedent to protect our children, not just my children, but all the children in Pearland. It is time to set a new precedent that we do not allow gas stations to be on property lines, sharing property lines with residential properties. I will wrap it up. I see I'm just about out of time. I just want to say if we must allow this gas station to be here, if we must ignore all of this, we would like to request that the pumps be returned to their original location on Manville, along with vent pipes, which are a primary source of benzene pollution, to put them as far away from our property line as possible. We'd like to request top-of-the-line vapor recovery systems, and for our privacy, a fence tall enough or a wall tall enough for us to not see the building or the fuel canopy. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for those comments. Now, if Michael Friday would step to the podium, state your name, address, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak as well. Thank you for coming out.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. I am Michael Friday at 7026 Heron Lane. So when we moved in, the old pump canopy was due west of our property, approximately 164 feet, like my wife stated, and it was also nominally on a crosswind. So that's one reason why when we moved in, we were unconcerned with potential pollution coming onto our property. But the new location is much closer to the southwest, off of the southwest corner of our property. And with winds being nominal south to southeast, it may not always be a problem, but sometimes you do get winds that range from the southwest. So in fact, in the last 17 days, there have been 5 days that whatever plume was coming off the station would have gone over our property. And some of these pollutants, not only just benzene, but also toluene, ethylbenzene, xylene, and all of these are also known to be a heavier weight than air. So they're not just going to rise above and go away. They're going to sink down onto us. Benzene's a carcinogen, toluene is a toxic irritant, ethylbenzene is also a toxic irritant, and xylene is known to be a narcotic in high concentration. So that's probably what makes people loopy if they're around too much fuel vapors. We would like to know if they can put the pumps back along Manville, or somehow arrange to make sure that any venting is done as far west and north on the property as possible. Keep the wall as tall as possible, because now the new structure is designed to be much closer to our property line than the original configuration of that station. I want to make sure that whatever vapor recovery venting system they use are going to be the most up to date, just to keep the rest of our neighborhood as protected as possible from pollutants, because we want to be able to move Pearland forward, be a modern city, modern station, modern pollution controls. And that's assuming that it must be in our station, because it's been out of service in 6 years and no one has really missed it. And I was also curious, there's a fire code which doesn't really give you any more standoff range. It seems to allow pumps and vents a little bit closer to the property. But does that actually account for this hot, dry, windy weather that we've had this summer? And I thank the council for their time.
Thank you for that. We will open it up for those wishing to speak for or against this proposed request. I want to thank both the Fridays for being here and offering your comments for the public record. Second attempt, those wishing to speak for or against this proposed request. Third and final time, those wishing to speak for or against this proposed request. All right, we'll open it up to questions from council. I do have a couple of questions on the site plan. I think they make some valid comments, whether or not the building and the pumps, kind of where they are. I'm noticing on the site plan, are they it looks and it appears when you look at the Google Earth map, the old layout is still up. So the amount of impervious cover then versus now, it looks like it's greatly increasing. I know we're looking at a CUP. It's not a zone thing. It's not it's a CUP. But my question is, they're increasing the impervious cover. So what about detention? So I'm not sure if the applicant has taken into consideration. You may have it under the parking. I'm trying to see it on the colored site plan here. Do you have detention added into this?
Yes, my name is Prasad Maragani. I live in 3815 Tarragon Bend Drive, Richmond, Texas. The engineer on the project, and yes, sir, the detention is underground for the whole project. We have provided more than the required drainage. The plans have already been submitted for this, and pending this planning approval, we would be submitting for final approval once we get the CUP approved. So the impervious cover, yes, it did change. It went higher. And the reason for the layout being this way was, as you can see, once the development restarted, we have lost about 35 foot on all sides of the property, which would not allow us to realign the fuel station, fuel canopy where it was originally before. That was the reason for the change. The original intent was to keep the actual layout as possible with the fuel canopy facing Manuel Road, which is what we would have preferred, the client would have preferred. But with the way the amount of land has been lost and the existing driveway and the tech start approval, which was the reason why our CUP expired, that's the only location we can get the driveway, and we cannot put the canopy in any other location.
Okay. So, Martin, what are we losing here? Is it the 30-foot landscaping buffer that's causing the fuel stations to be moved to where they are now versus out on 1128?
Mayor,
I'm thinking from a site standpoint, even the distance site point, as well as lighting. The fuel canopy was out on 1128 in the building. It was just rotated. Seems to me that would cut down on light pollution, as well as it would push the pumps further away from the homestead.
And to add on to that, both Manville and Bailey Road are within the corridor overlay district, so that's where you're seeing the enhanced landscaping from either side. Really and truly, the orientation of the building is at the request of the applicant engineer. So,
Under CUP, we can require it.
Yeah, and as such, we can make amendments as long as they are, willing to abide by those.
Martin, when was this property platted?
2020. The property was platted in 2020.
Okay. So the corridor overlay predated the plat then?
Correct. And they went through the platting during the lockdown and COVID phase. So.
Well, if it was platted before we changed the UDC for the corridor overlay, they could have a vested right case to shrink that. So that's the reason why I asked that. So,
okay.
All right, I'll open it up for questions, comments from council.
I thought the Fridays were very compelling. The things they said, also the pictures that they sent, were also very compelling. There's 13 gas stations in a 3-mile radius. I'm a hard no on this. I was already before the Fridays spoke, but that just made it more legitimate for me that this is not the right place for this. We don't need another gas station. 13 in a 3-mile radius. That says enough for me. And then the Fridays, I appreciate y'all coming in and speaking to us. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Questions, comments? Member Camcar?
Martin, can you go over what are the requirements for the UDC on the overlay district, just to refresh my memory on that?
So the corridor overlay district has a variety of standards that get applied to buildings that are developed that have frontage along a overlay district or a road that's classified in the overlay district. With that, we have requirements for articulation and of transparency within the building itself. We have enhanced landscape standards for both or for any frontage road, into any frontage that is along that road. And then we also have lighting standards that are implemented where they can't have greater than 1 candle foot at the property line. Additionally, there's requirements for undergrounding of utilities, for bicycle parking. And those are just the...
Okay. And were there any comments or issues with that the overlay requirements?
No, as you can see, they are abiding by the landscape requirements for the overlay district on both Bailey and Manville Road.
The applicant had no issues with our tree ordinance in relation to this, where there's screening?
Not that I'm aware of, but I'll let the applicant speak up.
No, sir. We actually provided more than required trees.
You're a star citizen, so appreciate that. Good to hear somebody's supportive of that. I'm just going to say this. Mrs. Friday was overwhelmingly convincing in her, somebody who has 3 kids under the age of 6. I hear the concern. The one thing I'm not going to be supportive, and it's nothing to do with the applicant. The applicant's done an admirable job with what they've asked, but I can't unhear what I've heard. That being said, I would say to the Fridays and their neighbors, this corner is going to be something. I don't know what it will be, but you have to be very comfortable with what the alternative may or may not be. You usually get 1 bite at the apple, not usually 2. So I'm very happy to cast my vote not supporting this, but we cannot fight every fight and defend every use, but I just want you guys to be very aware of that. But I'm not supportive. I appreciate the applicant's time, energy, and effort on this. I think their arguments are reasonable, but the city evolves and changes, and I think Mrs. Friday said that it's evolved and changed. And the 13 other gas stations in close proximity, I can't unhear that either. So I'm just not going to be supportive in this manner. But thank you to everybody involved.
Any other questions, comments? Mayor Pro Tem?
Oh,
Yeah. I would like to ask this of the applicant, as far as the positioning of the convenience store and the fuel stations, if you were to rotate it 90 degrees and get it further away from the property, the Friday's property, would you be open for rotating that, the design layout?
That was our original site plan. Actually, at this point, we have started this design back in 2020 after the plat was done. One set of drawings were submitted. We went almost through to the end of permitting, but we had to, the TechStart permit was not obtained, so we had to go back and get that, in which time the CUP expired. So we resubmitted the plans with the revised layout because if we turn the layout, I would need a couple of assurances. I need a landscaping buffer. I can provide 25-foot landscaping buffer to the property on the east and still be able to rotate the property. If I can get a concession on that one, yes, we could turn around, we could rotate it and keep the way it is right now. As a matter of fact, it's really, my client is not really happy with the building facing Bailey Road. He wanted it to face 1128 the way it is right now. But this was necessitated because of the easements and restrictions that we have in place. But if we can get a variance on one of those, yes, we can rotate it and move it along. And actually at this stage, we've invested all the time in a complete set of drawings. They're already in there. And this was supposed to be, I mean, like I said, the only thing we could not get was a TechStart driveway permit, which, as you know, dealing with TechStart takes a lot of time. So we got a CUP approved. The design drawings were done. Because of the delay from the tech start, we had to come back for a CUP. Now, we're being said that can be done. So if we can get some variances on this one, yes, we can rotate it and make it work for everybody. We even last time during the P&Z meeting, when we were asked if that wall could be raised up to 8 feet, even though it becomes a structural wall and we have to redesign it, we agreed to that one.
Okay. As far, Lawrence, that's what I was going to ask you, as far as if we were to ask for it to be rotated, so that we could compromise to be able to help Fridays out if we were to move with it, where it gets the pumps farther away from their property. Is that something we can handle tonight through a motion to change, or?
Yes, sir, it is. As it stands now, the site plan is not a condition. They're not mandated to build according to this site plan. However, if you were to pass a CUP, the whole purpose, the C is the condition, and the condition B that it be reoriented and the canopy be closer to Manville Road, 1128. So you can pass that as a condition, and then it would be up to the applicant and his design team to comply with that condition or to make a different business decision.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, I would agree with Councilmember Koza. If we can get this turned around 90 degrees, I think everybody will not be happy, but they won't be sad, right? So, and if we can give them a buffer of, I guess you said the 25-foot landscaping easement is causing the problems, is that right?
Yes.
Can we pass that today and call it a day on this?
The landscape easement is not something that the city council has the authority to do. A variance for the landscape easement or any of the buffers or something that would either go to P&Z or to ZBA, depending on what it is that they submit. I'm not pretending to understand what the concern is, because both of them are a corridor overlay district, whether it be Manville or Bailey. So you have the same buffer on either side. It's an issue of reshaping the building to make sure that you've got the room that you need. So maybe it's a longer building, or I'm sorry, a wider building, and it gets reoriented. Again, it's up to the design team, the design professionals, to comply with whatever condition you adopt.
So would it be better for them to table this today and go back?
If they go back, I'm sorry, I don't want to speak out of turn, but if you table it today, then they go to ZBA, and then ZBA passes it, and then it fails cure, at the next time that it comes back, they put additional time and effort in it at that point. I think the purpose of the 45-day clock or the 45-day turnaround for CUPs is traditionally to get to a quicker yes or no. A quicker, less expensive yes or no.
But I think, wouldn't that satisfy both parties for the most part? I know the Fridays aren't getting entirely everything that they want, but they're getting the tanks further away. The business owner would prefer to have the building facing 1128. I think it's kind of it's a compromise for both. And so you're saying that there's no way that we tonight can
you could pass the CUP.
Depth of the boundary is on the plat.
You can't adjust you can't grant a variance tonight. That is not a possibility. However, you can fix the location of the canopy tonight and pass the CUP with the fixed location of the canopy.
And then if we pass it that way in the design, they don't get a variance through ZBA to shrink the actual buffer zone.
Then they just have to design the building differently so they have enough space.
So it's
it's
a square piece of property. So rotating it, and I'm not an engineer and I'm not a surveyor, but if it's a square piece of property and it rotated, it seems to me it would work. The other things, I have a couple questions back. I meant to ask this just a minute ago. So Prasad, this again, the gas location, the gas station that was built in '84. It's been closed for some time. It's been closed for what, 6 years, 5 years?
No, it was during COVID. It was closed. It was shut down. It was originally intention of the owner was to remodel the existing store and not touch the building. But the way the gas canopies were, they were creating quite a bit of a traffic hazard with the new driveway that was laid out on Bailey. The entrance and exit onto TechStart was not really working out. So that's the reason why he has decided to change that.
Okay. And this is where I have just a fundamental issue. If we believe in property rights, he had a gasoline station that's been there since '84, closed the station in COVID, wants to remodel. It's really in his best interest to completely wholesale, bring it down and rebuild it. And yet we've got members that say, we don't care about that. We don't care that your business is there. We want you to just do away with it, sell the property and let somebody else do something. I don't think that's fair. At the same time, trying to work with you to how we can coexist. Move those pumps away from, and again, most of the people that live in West Lee bought there and that station was open and it was there. So it's trying to find a way to walk through this. And again, no one gets exactly what they want. But we find a compromise to allow business to go back and have a better building, much better, much safer, meets better building codes, fire code, the whole thing at the same time. Orienting this building and the pumps back to 1128 helps with lighting, helps with moving those pumps and those tanks further away. Are the tanks going to be directly underneath, or where are the tanks currently?
They're right there, east of the east of the canopy towards Bailey Street.
So if you were to rotate this, would those then be out closer to 1128?
We probably will we have to look at that. Depends on the fuel truck entrance and exit also. So we'll have to look at that once we turn them around.
Okay. And then you mentioned TxDOT and their permitting process. Where are you on their permitting process right now?
Oh, we received the permit. We reapplied for the project in July 2023 after we received the permit from TxDOT. We have it good till the end of next year.
So this entrance off of 1128 has received TxDOT's approval?
Yes, it did.
Okay. If you rotated that building, I think you would still keep that same entrance.
Yes, the driveway location cannot change. That is being provided for us and in any future development on the property towards the north of us. So that's why we have it open, where that driveway would be shared by the neighboring property.
Okay. Lawrence, I know that we can't direct the Zoning Board of Adjustment on anything like that, but if we had a CUP case with conditions that we've placed on it, does that go into any consideration at all at the ZBA? In other words, we're directing the orientation of this building a certain way. It may have a conflict with certain easements. Would that be considered at the ZBA level?
I think it's going to depend on whether or not it's a variance application or whether it's going to be a special exception since there was a prior building there. The standards for the two are going to be different, and I haven't gone through that whole analysis. But at the end of the day, if there was an additional dedication made to comply with the thoroughfare plan, and if there was a CUP that attached it as a condition, I do think that the ZBA would take that into consideration. I just couldn't tell you what their end result would be.
And I would think a special exception would be the route to go here as opposed to just a straight variance.
Again, I hadn't seen the application yet, so I couldn't say. That's speculative and puts me in a bad position.
All right. Any other questions, comments?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I agree. I think we need to rotate it, figure it out. I think it like what Rishi said, neither the applicant or the property owners are going to be excited or sad. But I think it helps to solve the issue because I feel and can be compassionate to both sides.
Right. I just think we owe it to both sides to work through a compromise.
Mayor, sorry, one question. Lawrence, what happens if the ZBA says no to our change? does it come back to us for overriding them?
No, sir, it does not. ZBA decisions are final, and if somebody wanted to appeal that, they'd have to go to district court. However, it's
What they'd have to do is come back with a different layout as far as the building. It would have to be longer and narrower, so that if it was 5 feet or 10 feet for the buffer, the building would have to be altered.
Okay.
So it wouldn't keep them from doing it. It would just mean that they have to apply whatever that buffer is.
I'll tell you, Mayor, I do hear your concern, and I think you spoke well. You know, I've driven by this many times before it closed, and it was a really ugly sight. And what they're showing today, I mean, I'm happy to see that they're willing to reinvest in our community. And I do hear the Fridays. I understand your concerns. But at the same time, we're trying to keep a business and our tax rates, and we talk about tax, and that's coming up. And so it's a fine balance to keep. So I certainly hope you guys will consider turning this building. And I think hopefully today or tonight you get a kind of a sense of where council will be when you do turn this around and kind of address as much as you can for the Friday's concerns.
So once we, from what I'm understanding, if we rotate the building, that would be okay?
For me, yes.
They haven't voted yet, so if
That'll
they
come in the
vote
next
for the CUP with a condition, whatever the P&Z conditions were, that would be something that might be included in the rotation of the canopy being on the Manville corridor instead of the Bailey corridor is a potential condition.
Yeah, and I'm learning of other screenings that could go way taller, 12, 15, 18 feet that are green, evergreen, that would be, screen, this whole site from a lot of the neighbors over time. Last call for questions, comments. Mr. Campbell.
Lawrence, just really quickly, so if we table, nothing happens. If we vote or amend, then what happens?
If a CUP is approved, whether it have conditions or not, they could submit the building permit. However, if one of the conditions is that the building be reoriented, they could still move forward with a building permit. If the applicant thinks that that is not possible because of whatever the reason is, and they think that a variance or special exception needs to be granted for one of the setbacks or buffers, they would have to submit that application to community development, who will then present that to the zoning board of adjustment. Then the zoning board of adjustment will either reduce that landscape buffer or setback or not. And then depending on the result of that, they'll either build, well, if they want to continue building, they would have to comply with whatever the ZBA's action is.
Yeah, and if we gave direction to rotate it, this further goes to it, and he goes to the ZBA, he's going to present both. If I rotate, I'm either going to have to cut into the 25 foot or I'm going to have to cut into the 30. Which one do you want me to do? This is what city council's telling me to do. Which one do you want me to go with? And that's...
it's a little confusing. The one thing I would add, I appreciate the applicant wanting to be amicable. I still can't get away from where my position is. This story isn't over. Just keep up with it, and we'll just see where it goes.
Yeah, Mayor, real quick. The owner's here, so, or at least a representative. So you've obviously looked at this scenario where we're talking about moving the building or rotating at 90 degrees. What are your issues with that? Would you be willing, I mean, if it got to ZBA and they said, well, no, you're going to have to shrink the footprint of your building, is that something y'all are willing to do?
Oh, I mean, we can make it work. The only thing is, if not the easements, then the driveway on Bailey Street will have to be adjusted. So our problem would be if that driveway would be adjusted, then there's a fuel truck can get in, get out of the traffic rotation within the property would be much better between the two driveways. We can make it work. If the dimensions of the building has to change, we can make that change.
Thank you.
Yeah. And to keep it, I think the original owner, or the owner originally wanted the orientation to be the same as it was before, so.
The previous CUP that was submitted with a rotated view. It was in a different direction.
Okay.
But since the layout was not too keen, the traffic rotation was not really great, at that point, the text art permit was not approved yet. So it had to be changed then after that.
All right. Last call, questions, comments? Lawrence, do you have something? Okay. With that, we will call an end to the public hearing, move to new business item number 4. Ms. Cade, we're to you. I think put it on the table and somebody else can amend, or you can make an amendment on the front end. What?
There were 3 staff recommendations.
I was going to say, what,
1 P&Z recommendation, and then a potential recommendation from City Council.
We put the, well, that's what, could we put that back up? They had it up there.
Yeah.
We, yeah, but you got
she's going to read the motion. Go ahead.
A consideration and possible action resolution number R 2023-CUP 2314. So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do I hear make a motion to amend?
make a motion to amend to add the 3 staff recommendations of the exterior building facade shall be developed in substantial conformance with materials as depicted in the facade renderings. Number 2, the columns supporting the fueling station canopy shall be wrapped with a masonry material that is consistent with an architectural element of the principal building. Number 3, the dumpster enclosure shall be made with the same material and primary color as the main building. And then a 4th amendment, the masonry fence be an 8-foot tall fence. And then the final and last amendment being that the building face 1128 or
Campbell. Oh, 1128.
Yeah, 1128 Manville Highway. Okay. So that it's orientated a 90-degree turn from the site plan as shown. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, a second to amend. Any other questions or comments on the motion to amend? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, we're voting on the motion to amend as put on the table by Member Koza.
Mayor Pro Tem Koza,
Aye.
Member Carbone,
Aye.
Member Kamkar,
Yes.
Member Cade,
No.
Member Barry,
Aye.
Member Patel.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-1.
We have an amended motion on the table now. With that, is there any final questions on the amended on the table? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, we'll vote on the amended motion.
Member Cade,
No.
Member Barry,
Aye.
Member Patel,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Koza,
Aye.
Member Carbone,
Aye.
Member Kamkar.
Nay.
The motion passes 4-2.
All right, thank you for that. Thank you for working through that with us. Like I said, not every time we get everything we want, but if we get a better product than we came in with, everybody wins. And we hope we can help you through the process as we move that on. Getting that tech stop permit and finalizing that helps, and so we don't want to mess that up with you. I mean, that's going to anchor your site. So with that, we will move to the consent agenda. I did receive one to be removed, and that was item C as in Charlie. Is that correct? All right. Didn't receive anything else. Mr. Berry, would you present consent agenda items A through L with the exception of C as in Charlie?
Yes, Mayor. Make a motion to approve the consent agenda items A through L with the exception of C. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary, we'll call for the vote.
Member Barry,
Aye.
Member Patel,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Koza,
Aye.
Member Carbone,
Aye.
Member Kamkar,
Aye.
Member Cade. The motion passes 5-0.
Excuse me.
Hold on.
Sorry, I didn't realize Member Cade stepped out of the chamber.
Yeah, see if she's out there. We have to have all 6 votes on this, folks.
Trent, it wasn't me. Wasn't me.
Noted.
We can now resume the vote count, the voting.
Member Cade.
Aye.
The motion passes 6-0.
All right, with that, Mr. Patel, would you put item C on the table, please?
Considering possible action, resolution R2023-204, so moved.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Quick staff report.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a grant-funded award of a bid for 64 ballistic shields for our police department. This has been part of the overall plan to provide additional shields and capacity for when we have any type of incident. So with that, we recommend the award to CopStop in the estimated amount of $241,582.72.
Sounds good. Mr. Camcar, you pulled this.
Just 2 quick questions. When do we expect delivery on these? We have a timeline. I know that was a.
Mr. Fernandez, would you mind going to the podium?
Looks like what we've got in the agenda request is 183 days.
My name is Rick Fernandez, and I'm the owner of CopStop. I spoke to Safariland, which is the manufacturer, earlier today, and they basically said roughly 4 months, and that's just simply because of the size of the grant for the state of Texas. All the orders have been submitted and or are being submitted, and so they're processing it as we speak.
Right. I just want to thank the chief. This came out of post-Uvalde action from last year. I appreciate the team. Their recommendation was to do these, and I'm excited that we're getting them done expeditiously, and if the state of Texas could help us, and I'm glad that we hope we never ever use these things, but I'd love to have them in the back of our cars if we need them. But thank you for the council and their wisdom to help get this thing done. It's good to see us continue on this path.
Very good. My only comment is let's hope and pray we never have to use them. Glad we have them. Let's hope we never use them. Yep. With that, any other follow-up questions, comments, concerns from council? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, we'll call for the vote.
Member Patel.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Koza.
Aye.
Member Carbone.
Aye.
Member Camcar.
Aye.
Member Cade.
Aye.
Member Berry.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Sounds good. We will move forward in our agenda. I'd like to take about a 10-minute recess. We've been sitting for just a little bit, and we're about to enter budget discussion. Why don't we take 10 minutes, reconvene at 8:10. at 8:10. With that, we'll move to new business continued. Number 5, fiscal year 2024 budget discussion number 3. With that, Trent, I'll turn it over to you and the staff.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council, once again. And we're going to jump into budget discussion number 3 here in just a moment, which is going to concentrate on our capital improvement program. I did want to just kind of introductory remarks that we did include a memo in your package that answers all the questions from budget discussion number 2. So if there's any questions regarding any of those, we can address those now. If not, we're going to focus on the CIP tonight. Are there any things we need to address or want to discuss as far as any of the questions from last week that were in the memo? If not, we will move on to the CIP. So in March, we conducted a CIP workshop, and that's really the last time we discussed our capital improvement program in detail with all the financials and the budgetary impacts. So we're bringing it back tonight in advance of the budget adoption in September. And so, that's kind of the way we set the schedule up this year. We moved the adoption of the CIP back in the time frame. And so we're again looking at how we modify that schedule for next year, because I think we had that March and now we're adopting. I think we need to have those closer together. So next year we're going to look at having the CIP budget discussion in the June-July timeframe and put it closer to getting to the budget adoption, tie those a little tighter together. So we're going to go through all the details, but just kind of to give you an overall sense of the changes or any modifications since the March workshop. We did update some project cost estimates just based on inflation and the cost of projects and newer bids that we've seen come in. And then the other one is that we added funding so that we can complete the repaving work in Wesley subdivision. So we're wrapping up the drainage project in there, and we're looking to allocate some funds towards redoing the streets because of the impacts of the construction. And we were able to identify some additional funds from another drainage project we could apply to that, and then needed some additional funds, so we've added that into the CIP budget that's coming before you in the next couple of weeks. So with that, we'll jump into the PowerPoint presentation. Back it up one. Can we back up one? Just make sure I covered everything. So we're going to talk about our property tax backed issuances first, talk a little background, ability to pay, the tax rates, and the future projections on tax rates for debt service, considerations when we're looking at reorganizing things, and then overall look at the projects and the prioritization of those projects, the operation and maintenance impacts of the projects, and then any discussion. And then the second half, we'll go into the enterprise fund and basically walk through the same discussion on the enterprise side of things. So, we always want to, as we look at the CIP and our CIP workshops, we always refer back to our future with a purpose. We take our strategic priorities, comprehensive plans, and all the infrastructure master plans, and how those all feed into the capital improvement plan as part of the output of that. So the overall on the CIP budgeting and overview is this is a culmination of all the information we work with you on throughout the year. So we got pre-award memos, we do project update memos, and then we do the bi-monthly milestone report on all the capital projects to keep you apprised of when we hit the different milestones in the projects. And then we've for the last, I think, 3 years or so, we've done our quarterly CIP update series, which does a deeper dive into each segment of the CIP, the projects in each of those segments, as well as the operational implications and operational status of those different areas. So today we'll be discussing what we're building and what it takes to fund those and operate and maintain those projects. So this is just the schedule we've gone through the past year with since the adoption of last year's CIP. We've gone through the different CIP update series, and we're here March, and then on March 20th we had the CIP workshop, and then the things we have upcoming are in September, the actual adoption of the CIP by resolution, followed by the October 16th, we'll have the Parks and Facilities CIP update series, followed in December by the Water and Wastewater CIP update series. And then we'll, of course, schedule those again throughout 2024. So just touching on our capital project financing overview, we've got the policy and planning piece of that, which is really like the workshop we did in March, and then the presentation tonight, and then the CIP adoption in September. And so just want to reiterate and remind everyone that our FY24 debt service rate, which is part of the budget we've been talking about, that's really locked in from the projects we've approved throughout this year and the debt we've approved throughout this year. And so any changes to the CIP moving forward, those decisions impact the FY25 debt service tax rate. So then, of course, the execution piece of that is that we present the budget gets adopted, and then in October, after we've approved the budget, we will do the intent to reimburse. So that authorizes us then to move forward and commits the funding to allow that work to begin on our FY24 projects. And then operationally, we'll come back in May of 24 for our annual debt issuance approval. And then in June, going through the process of actually selling that debt in the third quarter of 2024. And then, of course, the debt payments follow the following year. So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Rachel Winslow, our budget officer, to walk us through the other details within the CIP. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Epperson. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. The property tax-based debt for the CIP involves our current debt so we're legally required to levy a debt service tax rate that generates enough revenue to pay our debt service obligations, and our current debt service obligations are separate from our operations and maintenance portion of the debt service or tax rate. And our debt service amount for the upcoming fiscal year 24 is already fixed at $47.2 million. This is for debt service for projects that are already in the execution and operational phases. Our proposed debt service tax rate for fiscal year 24 is set at 33 cents per $100 in assessed valuation. And this proposed property tax rate will bring in approximately $41 million in property taxes, and the additional expenditures will be offset by a TERS reimbursement in order to pay the full debt service amount. Any decisions today will affect the property tax rate for fiscal year 25 and beyond. Our debt to AV ratio over time is shown here. This does indicate that our debt to AV with TERS and without TERS debt will continue to trend downwards with a brief spike in, I believe, 26 and 27. Our forecasted debt service tax rate, based upon the February evaluation, our FY24 tax rate is lower than the February forecast of 34 cents. With the bond election, and the maximum forecasted debt service rate is lower than the February forecast of 36 cents. The projected total debt service increase is 2 cents from fiscal year 23, and our debt service obligation increased from $283 million to $302.9 million, primarily due to the addition of the fiscal year 28 projects as well as inflationary increases on current projects. Our bond sales for the last 3 years, as well as the future years, are shown here. This year, we're estimating around $98 million for fiscal year 24 between our certificates of obligation, general obligation debt, and our TERS certificates of obligation. These slides show our capital improvement projects in priority order. Priority 1 projects are projects that are tied to outside funding obligations and may or may not have city contribution or debt issuances associated with them, and delaying them could impact the outside funding. Priority 2 projects are projects that are new or include the repair or replacement of critical infrastructure. Some of these projects are already underway and others will be added in fiscal year 24. Several of these projects were recently approved on the bond election. Priority 3 projects are projects that could be postponed with moderate impact, but can also include projects approved on the latest bond election. And Priority 4 projects are projects that could be postponed with no major repercussions, but also in this case have no debt service component at all. So the totals by the critical ranking are $14 million in Priority 1 FY24 debt issuances, 81.4 in Priority 2, 3.3 in Priority 3, and $0 in Priority 4 for an estimated total of $98.9 million in fiscal year 24 projects. We do evaluate the projects from the time of the intent to reimburse and throughout the year in order to issue debt that will be expended in a short order of time and that is truly needed. All projects we do have a operations and maintenance component in one way or another. So for projects that we are estimated to complete in fiscal year 23, the additional O&M budget requirement in fiscal year 24 already included in the FY24 budget is $280,000. And for general fund projects slated to be completed in FY24 or to have work done in FY24, the additional O&M budget is estimated to be $2 million. That is because of staffing and equipment for the fire station. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Mr. Epperson.
So we did want to point out a legislative change to the council, and it's House Bill 3699, and it's relating to municipal regulation of subdivision and approval of subdivision plans or plats. So a couple of implications with this. We may have to have some revisions to the UDC around platting, but the bigger point or part of it we wanted to talk about tonight associated with the CIP is that under it, we can no longer require dedication of land for a future street if that street is not included, funded, and approved in a CIP, in a capital improvement program. So the implications of that is that if we can't get those right-of-way dedications, there's a couple of implications with that. The property owner could potentially build a building or structure that's too close or in the future right-of-way. So obviously when you go to acquire that, you've got a much higher expense to deal with that being built in that location. And then of course, just, adding the cost of all that right-of-way acquisition to the projects themselves. So, legal's taking a look at this, seeing if there's, different ways we can deal with this. Because we still have the ability to get water and sewer easements, and those things may, preclude some of the damage this could potentially do. But the other, option we've talked about is do we look at select roadways that are on our thoroughfare plan that have to be, built out to a much wider right-of-way at some point in the future, and going ahead and adding those to the CIP out in the 5th year. Plan on doing that, and if there's the means to not do those, you just keep moving those out in the future. But we're really evaluating, the implications of that, but wanted to make council aware that there's potential we might want to consider bringing back some of those projects, some of those road projects that are not in our plan right now, and add those to the plan. So with that concludes the portion on the tax back debt, and so we open it up for questions, Mayor.
Open up for questions, comments. Real quick on the issue from, was it 3699? Yeah. I get that, and it doesn't surprise me. It'll just cost more for our projects later, which it's a two-edged sword, right? I mean, there's one thing about getting it at dedication at a plat, and then there's the second about, what do we do, moving forward.
I think the consternation is not so much over if we had additional land right away costs, but it's if a building gets built, a new building gets built, and
So I
it's
guess
impacted by the.
So that's where, and we'll get more into it with the UDC, but that's really where I wanted to ask my question, and that is if we know a certain, and when I'm going to ask a question, funded and approved in a CIP, so that means we typically only fund our 1 year.
Well, I think
maybe 2 years, and then there's projects that are obviously moving forward, but
yeah, I think that's a good point that you're truly only funding the first year, but I think in a CIP, it's typically considered a 5-year plan, and if you've got a plan or means of funding it, that may be one way to have that considered. I think that's why we still got it. We're doing our legal research and trying to figure out exactly, how this is going to be applied and what it means for us.
So what if something like, again, Broadway, I mean, funding is dependent on the state, yet we know, that project's going to move forward. I mean, part of it's funded, the other part has been put into the.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, so one portion of it we know is funded, and then the other portion is not. So yeah, it's there. And I believe it does have some reference to state plans as well.
Actually, it says county plans, not state plans, and not HGAC plans, and not federal plans. So it's municipality, but those are who adopt CIPs. So it makes sense there, but fully funded, I think, is going to be where the dialogue continues between us, the state legislature, and whoever was advocating for the bill, because, as you know, the first year is really what is funded on the CIP, but they reference the CIP, which is a 5-year plan. So is fully funded meaning you've identified the funding source and it's on the CIP, or does that mean you have the money in the bank ready to go, or you've already sold the bonds or the cash on hand? Okay. We don't know the answer to that question, which is why we don't have an answer for you tonight.
More to come. All right. So, but in our UDC, would we be able to, even if it's not funded, we're not going to take the right of way, and we force buildings back so we're not buying brand new buildings?
So there is a provision in our UDC where the city engineer has the authority to identify what we're going to call a reservation for a future thoroughfare. So we don't actually get the dedication, but we also may have the ability to stop somebody from building in that area. The difficulty with that comes, do you do the reservation for the roadway, or are you able to do it for the roadway and the water and sewer easement, or whatever the, or the future landscape, or the buffer, or, where does the line start? Yeah. And that's the issue that we're trying to make sure we understand the new legislation and how it affects that reservation language that's currently in the UDC.
So potentially multiple tools or options, but we just have to work through what's the best approach.
That's more of a protection, not so much going out and funding it, but just protecting us for something future, that we're not buying a building that's 4, 5, 6, 10 years old. That,
And it's not just protecting us, it's protecting the person who just established their building, who might have that building damaged.
Right.
And they chose that location for a reason.
Right.
And now, if this happens, their building could be damaged, and they might no longer be able to have a business there.
Yep. Open it up to questions on the tax back debt portion. Camper?
I'm going to get in the weeds here a little bit, so just bear with me. Can we go to slide 15 on the projects or tier 1 projects? The format on the labeling is the same across all the priorities. The items and the cash and other fundings, what are those kind of linking to? I understand the first 4 or 5. I'm almost sure those are all GEO type items for Hickory Creek, Garden Acres, some of these other items. But what are those items at the top and the bottom that aren't tied to anything else to the check mark, but they've got some other cash or other funding?
So you're saying the ones that are in the right-hand column that's cash or other funding, what are those funding sources? Sure. So, they're either where we've got agreements, like on the master drainage plan, we've got agreements with the EDC and the drainage district number 4 to share in the cost of that. The Hickory Creek, Garden Acres, those are the GLO dollars, as well as the NAP Activity Center. We do have some CDBG dollars there. Macawa is in the tip, so that's 80% federal funding for roadways through HGAC and TxDOT. The Mobility and Thoroughfare Plan update, that I believe is through HGAC. And then 518 corridor study is EDC. The 521 signal upgrade at Broadway, I'm not exactly sure. That one may be associated with the FM 521 roadway expansion. So 521's getting expanded. So that's probably making sure that we get our equipment and our standard signal in that project. So that's the type of funding.
For future items, can we just put cash or HVAC? HVAC, all of these projects make a lot more sense as soon as you said that word, and it just was easier to come to my mind. The one that's kind of the middle of the road is 1.5 million, the emergency distribution warehouse. Can you dig into that?
So this is the project we looked at probably a couple of years ago, located at the fire administration building, behind the fire administration building, for storing of materials and water and anything else we need to be planning on storing for an emergency response. And we've been able to work through, if Joel's here, he can give us, I don't see Joel or Rachel, the details on exactly where that matching funds is coming from.
I believe it's FEMA. Not 100% sure, but we have a matching portion that's about 200,000, and then the remainder will come from, I'm hearing yes behind me, FEMA.
Yeah, so I think she's correct. It's FEMA because we had a project with FEMA that we didn't move forward with, so we're able to turn that into this project through their alternative project process.
How much is FEMA giving us for that?
About the 1.5. Is that what FEMA's giving us?
No, that's the total project cost, and then we're contributing that 201,782,000, and the remainder will come from FEMA.
So 1.3 from.
I remember that from a few budget cycles ago, and we didn't have a federal plug into that.
We didn't, and I think the direction was if we can get it funded in this manner, then we move forward with the project. So we were able to do so.
Got it. 200,000 to 1.3. That's 6 to 1. We'll take that. I can get that. And then on the next page over, the fiber optic item, the backbone, the priority for number 2. It doesn't seem to have the Magnolia from Cullen Business Center. I just don't recall that one right off the top here, but we're using COs, and I'm guessing some level of HVAC, something or other. Can I just get a little more color on that? It's kind of midway. It's right below the natatorium.
Sure. So you have what the other funding is on that one? While she's looking that up. Is this the project that's already actually underway? It's in design, so.
I can look into it and get back.
So
send me an email
I think I
about it
recall.
later on.
I think we probably have some water and sewer funds in that because those connect to our SCADA system at lift stations. So we do fund a portion of that through water and sewer. Does that ring a bell, Rachel?
Yes, if it's fiber, it would be primarily cash funded, and usually jointly if it links up with a water sewer plant or lift station between general fund and enterprise fund.
So I think that's a good point that she just made right there. Is that's cash funded, so there's actually no proposed debt for that project.
The only other item is that fire range and the track. That didn't seem to make one of these 4 priorities. Can I get some color on that?
So I do see the law enforcement training center. Is that the one at the PSB that we're working on right now? We don't have we have the.
Did I miss it? It's possible. Font is kind of small.
Those are future year projects, I would think, FY26 or later,
Okay.
and a potential future bond election.
Okay, yeah, they're not shown here because we don't have them planned for any debt issuance in FY
One by the public
24.
safety building.
What's that?
The one by the public safety building renovation, is it the one right above there, the law enforcement?
The law enforcement training center. That's the old Fire Station 4 renovation for the law enforcement training center. The track and the firing range, there's no plan to issue any debt for FY24 for that, so that would be a future year. So that's why it's not showing up here.
I read the email from last week. Believe it or not, I read the emails, and I know that we closed the one down at ACC because they had a lead issue. So I'm still buying into the vision that Chief Spires has that goes over with the rest of this academy that we're putting the time in to have that fire range and that track.
Right. So we've been working through that process. We'll probably have an update out to you guys within the next few weeks. We've got some new numbers we're looking at. It's just we've been kind of concentrating on budget and hadn't been able to circle back around to that. But that work continues, and I think we've got a good plan moving forward. It's just going to be when we're able to fund that and how we fund that.
Absolutely. That sounds great. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Good questions. Any other questions on this portion of the presentation? Seeing none, we'll continue on.
All right, am I handing this back to you now? All right, all yours, Rachel. Thank you.
So next we'll focus on projects related to our enterprise fund or water sewer fund. So the city is legally required to generate enough water and sewer revenue to pay the debt service obligations for projects related to that fund. Starting in fiscal year 2022, we split the debt service fund and the operating fund apart. The proposed water and sewer rate increase is 14% for fiscal year 24, and the proposed fiscal year 25 or projected increase is 17%, which is a decrease from the fiscal year 23 projection of 19%. Our debt service payments of $34 million for fiscal year 24 is already fixed. Projects funded in this CIP by water sewer revenue are needed to ensure a safe and reliable system with adequate capacity to serve customers. This CIP contains $117 million in ongoing projects and planned debt to be sold in fiscal year 24, and among that, up to 18.1 can be paid back using impact fees. So we have our current year debt obligation, our fiscal year 2024 CIP. We'll come back with the intent in October and then sell debt for the fiscal year 24 CIP projects, and those debt payments will then begin in fiscal year 25. So our debt payments are paid for by user fees and impact fees from our water and sewer system, and these payments are the major driver of our water and sewer rates. So we have three key metrics that determine our minimum utility rate increase. They include our bond coverage ratio of 1.15, our fund balance restricted for debt service of 20%, and our enterprise operating reserve of 15%. Our bond coverage ratio is our fiscal year 24 revenue less operating expenses divided by our debt services. And with the 14% proposed rate increase, we will meet those obligations. The enterprise fund projects are prioritized a little differently. Our priority 1 projects are in process and or tied to outside funding, such as TWDB, TxDOT, or developers. And there's one project that falls in this category. It involves debt that was already issued in fiscal year 25 and then, or 23, excuse me, and then future debt. Priority 2 projects are projects that are new, repair, or replacement of critical infrastructure and may or may not be tied to another project. Most projects are priority 2 in the water and sewer fund. So for fiscal year 24, the total projects by priority are 0 for priority 1 and then $117.3 million in priority 2 debt issuances. The operations and maintenance impact for projects completed in fiscal year 24 or fiscal year 25 is estimated to be $82,692. And that concludes the water sewer based portion of our discussion.
All right. Thank you, Rachel, for that. We'll open it up to questions and comments from council. Water and Sewer Fund, Enterprise Fund.
My guess, as you know, both of these sections have been planned. We've seen this so many times. I think staff's done good communication. So my silence isn't I'm zoning out. It's y'all have done it well. You're telling the same story over and over, and it's starting to sink into a lot of folks up here, apparently. Thank you.
Member Patel?
Well, I can't tell you that it's sinking into my head. I apologize. My concern is the rate that we're moving up, and I get it. We have a lot of infrastructure projects that we kick the can down the road, but how do we get this message across to the users, right? I mean, that's the only thing they see is 14% increase, and then again 17, and again 17. And I'm having a hard time understanding it. And I know we have a lot of needs. I mean, when I saw that, if you can go back real quick, I'm sorry, right there, $230 million. I mean, that's just a huge number. And I certainly, there's a lot of big numbers. And so I know the staff is doing a great job communicating with us, but I think it's very important that we understand we got to get this out to the taxpayers to make sure they understand what we're facing.
To your point, one of the things that I've attempted to do this calendar year is anytime I'm speaking anywhere, I bring up water and sewer rates and why. Starting all the way back with the State of the City address, we had a whole section on what's driving our rates. We looked at the rate model. We projected out the 5 years. So we're letting people know what's coming. I can't talk to 130,000 people individually. You just physically can't do that. But one of the things that we do, just like the other night at the Talk of the Town, we did talk about the budget. We talked about what's going on in the rates. So how do we do it? Collectively, everybody that we're talking to, when the city's putting things out on social media and other places is backing it up with why it's necessary. Like in this particular case, the Longwood Water Reclamation Facility decommissioning, that plant's almost 60 years old. It's outdated, it's inefficient, it's in the floodway, so every time we have when you tell people every time it floods, that plant goes underwater. So they get the picture, pretty quick. No one likes paying an additional 14%. No one. Business owners don't like it. I don't like it. My neighbors don't like it. But in that particular case, we don't have much of a choice. We're at 90% capacity. We're already operating on waivers from TCEQ because we know that project was coming. So how we do it, one-on-one, hard work, Josh and his crew continuing to back up the message. And like I said, I've made it just about any time I'm publicly speaking this year, anywhere, we talk about water and sewer rates and address it that way.
Mayor, I'd like to add a few things to that too. I think you heard me right away when I saw this slide tonight. For the 5th time, I think I stared at it for about 20 minutes the very first time. But I think it's working. Trent and I were having a discussion before the meeting earlier today regarding the new water plant treatment facility coming online, and the fact that we spend X amount of dollars when we're having. Why don't you explain for the city of Houston and the amount of money we spend on purchasing water from the city of Houston on the west side of town, and in the future maybe we're not going to have to get into stage 2 water restriction and things of that sort. So I think overall the plan is working, and I'll let Trent elaborate on that. He knows the numbers better than I do, but give us a little insight into that.
Sure. So, I think it's a good time to talk about it since we just did enter, or we're going to Wednesday enter stage 2 drought restrictions. We right now we have 2 major sources of water west of 288, and that's 6 million gallons a day take point from City of Houston, and then the well at Kirby, which is somewhere around 2.5 million. I may have that a little off, but somewhere around that. And so, we're pretty dependent upon that and during the summer months on the City of Houston connection. We have that set. It's basically a take or pay at 1.3 million gallons per day. So we pay a certain rate there, and then anything we take above and beyond that, we pay a surcharge for. So the water rates go up, and that's expensive water in the first place because it's like a wholesale price. Because unlike what we get from the Southeast plant at Alice Street, we're not a co-owner in the plant on the west side, so it's expensive water. So once we have the surface water plant online, We're looking at taking that down to where we're just taking the take or pay amount, the minimum amount. We still have that additional capacity available in the summer months if needed. But I think if we had, if we were able to have the surface water plant completed at this point, and then on the east side, we've got the Bailey plant and Magnolia plant, those water wells under a refurbish process they've been under for a couple of years. If we had all that once next year when we have all these online, we would unlikely be even having to look at stage one or only stage one, kind of everything else being the same. So, the investments are good. The long-term investments the city made even back into the late 90s to get the water rights to build that surface water plant are good. It's just it's good investments. We are seeing on the wastewater side a little bit where our plants have, we've drugged those along as we can, and now we've got to renew that infrastructure like we have at Reflection Bay, and we're doing so at JHEC right now. We've got to do the same at Berry Rose and Longwood, and that really sets us up for long-term success, having really renewed the bulk of our plants over a fairly short period of time. It's kind of like the growth hit us, got us to a point where we really had to do a lot of that at the same time. That's what we're dealing with. So
I look at that, I listen to that, and I reflect on my water bill that I received just a couple weeks ago. I used 32,000 gallons of water last month, apparently. It's a lot of water, but it's about a $400 bill, right? It's extraordinarily expensive, or it seems like it's really high. But over time, the city of Pearland has made these investments in updating our facilities, and it is a big number. But at least we're going to have in the future, we're going to have water to be able to bring into our homes. And sure, if I have to go on water restriction for my yard, so be it. But we're going to have drinking water in Pearland, and we're going to have water for all the residents of Pearland. So it's kind of a bittersweet deal for me because we have made those investments. So I'm happy about that, but we're having to pay right now for the future.
And I think the alternative is we end up, as Jackson, Mississippi, and we have boil water notices every other day because they didn't keep up with their infrastructure and their growth. And I think that's a worse scenario than even this, because then you're paying emergency work to get done. You're paying extra to get it done overnight. And again, nobody, including me, wants to pay a 10%, 12%, 17%, increase in water. But also don't want to have our city in a situation where we're on the news 24/7 because we could have planned this out a little bit better. Most of the cities that are in that dire situation, the warning signs were there. They ignored them, just completely ignored them. Said, well, let's kick the can down the road. I'll just tell you, the city of Houston, their Northeast water plant, $1.7 billion increase in size of that plant. 3 or 4 administrations ago knew they needed to do that plant, but kicked the can down the road. All those administrations said, nope, not on my watch. I'm not going to face the public and do it. And so now they're at a critical situation where in that area of town, you can't even get a permit to build a business or build a house. There's no water. There's no water rights to it. So I don't know that that's a better situation than when they're in, and I guarantee it's costing them more if they'd have done it 10 years ago. It would have, number one, it had been done. It wouldn't have cost $1.7 billion. So lessons learned through that. Remember Camcar?
I got a couple of point of information items. Can we go to slide, looks like 34, I guess the next one. Is that 34? Or it's 34 on this
34.
PDF, so maybe it's the next one after that. So the city of Pearland is issuing $117.3 million in debt issuances in this upcoming calendar year.
That's the current plan as reflected in the CIP, and we'll bring you the intent in October. But we evaluate those projects throughout the year based off of the engineering and public works ability to do the work. And we will end only end up issuing debt that we actually need in fiscal year 24. So there's the possibility for that to come down.
Is that yes or no?
Yes, that's the current plan.
So, yeah, so that's the maximum amount. Annually, we do the intent to reimburse in October. We don't do our debt sale until, June or so of next year. So we're able to evaluate at that point, how far did we make it into these projects? Do we need the full 117? And typically just, the way projects progress, we're able to pull that down. Because we kind of plan for, we plan for in the CIP, if everything goes right on every project, we need to make sure we have got the money to pay for them. Inevitably, where we end up in the springtime when we evaluate that number typically comes down, but that would be the maximum amount.
In the scenario you're laying out, I'm an Aggie, I'm gonna use a round number. Instead of 117, we use 110. What do you guys do with the $7 million that we authorized?
We do not sell it.
Will there be like a notice or an email, or how do we know here on the dais
So
that
just
$7 million didn't go out?
Just like the COs and the public improvement bonds and the GOs we brought to you earlier this year, we give you an accounting of, here's what was in the intent to reimburse, the $117 million. We'll show you exactly what each project needs at that point and how much we need to sell. So you actually take action on that and see that at the point where we're ready to sell debt.
For the team's edification, can we just bring this slide back whenever we do that so we can kind of identify that? It kind of gets lost in the sauce a little bit.
Yeah, we always start with what did we plan on selling, and it'll have the projects in 117, and then the next column is what we're actually selling. So the same numbers that make that up, make this up will be shown there.
And then going back to your surcharges comment, when we were doing the stuff out of the Shadow Creek plant, and you said we had to buy 1.5 million or 1.3 million in gallons, and then there's essentially an accelerated rate for every gallon over. What was that during your time? What was that accelerated amount when we were taking over and above the contracted threshold?
I don't know the exact rate. Years ago when I knew the rates, it was somewhere around an additional 85 cents per 1,000 gallons.
Was that maybe in the hundreds of thousands of dollars of extra payment? Is it $1 million per year?
We can bring that information back to you. I know we evaluate setting that we evaluated back when we set that take or pay across the entire year. So obviously it cost us more in the summer months because we're taking more than the 1.3. But we have to look at in the winter months we may not take any over that amount, and so you look at what's the minimum payment we would make any given year on an average year. Obviously, a year like this, you can't.
Was it paid annually, monthly, quarterly?
We pay that bill monthly, I believe.
I'd love to see the last 5 years of data on that, just
Sure.
out of curiosity, in a memo or a later email.
Sure.
And then you made an interesting comment about the plants on the water side that we're updating, and you said that they're kind of in quick succession. In your experience, is that a normal occurrence, or are those spread out more evenly?
So that was on the wastewater side. So a lot of it's driven by our growth. So on the wastewater side, under our permits with TCEQ, when those plants hit 75% capacity, we have to start the planning to expand those projects. And then when you hit 90, you have to pull the trigger on starting construction. And one of our experiences over the past 10 years is that we grew so rapidly out in the Shadow Creek Ranch area is that when we hit 75 and we started the design, we were at 100 before we could even complete the design. And so we had to take some kind of extraordinary measures with a package plant to do some things out there. So with JHEC and these others, we're trying to make sure we started some of the preliminary work in advance of hitting the 75, but just making sure we're doing those. And then, the JHEC plant and the Berry Rose plant are much older than the Reflection Bay one were as well. So those plants have some of the original components, and like the mayor mentioned, with Longwood and Berry Rose, some of those date back to the 60s. And so, it's really time as we upgrade the capacity of those that we upgrade, a lot of the technology and everything else within those plants.
Can I get my slides queued up? The last 3 items on this. The water situation is what it's going to be, and I don't pretend to try to yell at the council or anybody else. I mean, it took us 50 or 60 years to get here. And I hate to say it, it's going to take us 10, 20 years to get through here. That water plant, if last time I think we have to have our CIP update on that pretty soon, Trent. I think member Koza brought that up, that we probably haven't had that in our 90 days. But, you know, we didn't get to the situation overnight. The Barry Rose facility, the John Heck Hargrove facility didn't turn 60 years old overnight, and the renovations needed there didn't just come out of thin air. And I would tell you, we're doing over $500 million just in the water plants, and then you add in the surface water plant. Now you're over $500 million. That's a lot for any citizen business to take on, and I'm not going to belabor that. There's a lot of people here are going to give us good reasons why we need to do that. I don't necessarily disagree, but timing in a lot of businesses means everything, and our timing just sucks right now. I don't know how else to say it. And we didn't cause COVID, we didn't cause inflation, but we got to suck it down. There are things though that we do control, and so I want to bring this up here. And this, I appreciate the council indulging me. This is our general fund expenses for the year. They're up 3.6% year over year. This is not Alex's numbers. This is City of Pearland's numbers. If you want to go on the website under our budgets, it's there. In fairness to the staff, that top line number of 114,257 has been adjusted now to just 114, just a hair over, due to the contract item that they did on the landscaping. But I just want to present consistently what we showed, so nobody asks us that we're doing anything funny. But that 3.6 number is real. That's year over year. That's math. It's not Alex's opinion. It's just math. We control all that spending. There's no TCEQ involved telling us what we can and can't do, what we have to do, have to not do. That's our choice. So can we go to the next slide? This is our property tax worksheet. State mandates this. You can see for yourself, you know, what the calcs are. The 7.9 is a derivative of a couple other budget inputs. But this is not just general fund expenses, but this is real money. There's no Pearland money, it's your money. The City of Pearland doesn't have a printing press. And the last thing I'll point out in this discussion, and the reason it dovetails into water is the water issue is something that we have somewhat control, not total control. We have to have clean water. I don't disagree on that. But we do have options on what we spend money on and what we don't spend money on. Let's bring that next slide up, Josh. Our friends in the city of Alvin decided they wanted to spend their money, or in some cases not spend money, and increase their homestead exemption to 20%. And this is not old. This is, I don't even think, 60 days old. They've made a tangible choice. City of Pearland's homestead exemption is 2.5%. I'm starting to beat the drum on that. I will continue to beat the drum on that. Member Epperson. City Manager Epperson has committed for us to have a meeting, I want to say the second meeting in October, to discuss this critical item. We have a discussion that we can continue on in FY 24-25 about increasing the homestead exemption. I can't do anything about water, where that's 14%. But there are 7 people here that can decide that they want to increase the homestead exemption and give relief to taxpayers, and that's important. And so I would just tell you, we are up 3.9%. We are spending money. I would like to spend a little bit less money and try to give relief. I can't do anything about water bills. The math is the math. We're going to vote to keep having clean water, but we can vote here very shortly, hopefully in the next 6 months, to start working on this exemption thing. So I appreciate the council for giving me the space to say these comments. I understand they're not exactly the same, but I think there is a piece of water. We can't control those weight increases. This is something we can't control. So thank you.
Member Camcar, the one thing about Alvin, they're at 14 cents over the no new revenue rate, while we're only 10 cents over the no new revenue rate. Do you think that's directly related to the homestead exemption?
I would tell you that the city of Friendswood has found a way to be at 20%. The city of Katy has increased their homestead exemption. The city of Waco in this last year went to the max. City of Carrollton has increased. We are not the only city that has costs. We're not the only city that has clean water needs. We just have to make a conscientious decision. The $114.2 million is going to get voted on by the 7 people that sit up here, and they're going to get to make a decision. Do they want to spend on those items, or do they want to help the taxpayer? And you can do both. But the chart, can we pull my slide back up one more time? And I thank you, Member Cade, for bringing this up. we'll go back up to the first one. That chart is at a 30-degree angle. It is consistent upward trajectory. That is a choice. That's all I'm saying.
I would argue that might be 45 degrees.
45 degrees, fair enough.
And again, I thank you for Member Camcar to point that out. I'll also point out that Alvin, even with a 20% decrease or 20% homestead tax exemption, is increasing their property taxes intake by 16+%. So where does that all go to? It goes to the business community. So there is an offset when you do that. Not saying that we shouldn't do it. We should do it with eyes wide open, with data, and make smart decisions as we move forward, as we've always said. I'm also going to make sure, for the record, yet again, this time last year, we talked about the homestead tax exemption. I asked council in that meeting to bring it up at the strategic planning workshop in February. It was not mentioned a single time that day. It was not mentioned a single time to the consultant in the questions leading up to it. So then we get to June, we have to have that passed and approved so it can go into effect by June 30th. We had a workshop where we did discuss it and deferred to get through budget where we're going to do it. And we've got some promises and assurances that we'll have that discussion come October. Hopefully we can work through it and we devise a plan to do something for our homestead exemptions as we move forward. But I'll also point out that even in Alvin, it's probably the biggest budget in their history. As they're continuing to grow, they'll next year have the biggest budget in their history. I'll also note that they're now having to make those same decisions in their water and sewer. They'll have a 12% increase in water rates this year because they are struggling as a growing city to keep up with demand. They had to make a decision a couple of years ago. Probably one of the biggest decisions, biggest purchases was a upgrade to a lift station that was holding back growth. Early on was about a $19 million purchase. I think they were able to get it in around $15 million, and part of that 12% is because of that. They are now having to make the decision to spend $40 million on an upgrade to one of their sewer plants. Again, directly attributable to growth. It's where we were 20, 25 years ago. I remember sitting here making the decision to spend $40 million on the Southeast Water Plant in Houston, biggest purchase in the city's history at that point, but it worked out. It's what we needed. It's what we needed to keep up with the growth. So, and I'm very, very careful not to compare our city to our neighboring cities. Alvin staff proposed a 66-cent tax rate. Council actually increased it. What they're going to the out there to the public is 68.5. So that council, while they gave that, have also raised the rate up even more than where they are. They're still lowering their rate, but as Member Cade said, no new revenue rate is still 14 cents lower. But I'm real careful because these area cities like Alvin, Manville, City of Friendswood, none of those have a full-time fire department. None of those pay property taxes on full-time fire like we do. That's a big differentiator between our cities. When I remind people of that, they're not thinking that. Well, they're thinking, well, your tax rate's 62 or 63 cents. You're going to this. Well, they're 5 or 6 cents lower than that, right? Add full-time fire, see what happens. You can't compare one city to the next. We're here to make sure that our city is run efficiently and in the best way possible. The last thing I'm going to say, and I'll turn it back over to council, is you're right. We make conscious decisions and choices on what items we're going to pay for in the budget. In that M&O side of the budget, that's where the, quote, discretionary spending is. I've also, through this process, haven't heard a single item to cut. Haven't heard it since the first budget workshop up until now. What do you cut from that budget? As we all know, The line was to keep it as flat as possible. We have our own inflation. We even have staff that we have to pay, and I've heard nothing to be cut. So I would challenge between now and our first vote on the budget, if we want to cut something, to cut.
Mayor.
Remember, wait a minute. Everybody gets the opportunity to talk. Come back.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, I hear Councilmember Camcar talking about this tax exemption. And since I'm new, maybe I missed the point when we had the workshop. On one hand, you want to increase the tax exemption to 20%. From my understanding, we're going to go up on tax rate. It's not going to decrease our expenses. We're going to still be at 114.2 million. All you're going to do, and earlier I think there was some information provided from last budget meeting about the commercial and residential. So you're going to pay from one hand to the other hand being the commercial. For $38 a year savings, we're going to destroy the businesses. What did I miss in there?
Mayor, may I respond? He directly commented back to me. All right, thank you, Mayor. You know, Member Patel, I think it's extraordinary that we are where we are. The reality is we didn't cause COVID, we didn't cause inflation, we didn't pump billions of dollars into the economy from the federal government. All we can control is what we do. Josh, can we put that chart back up really quickly here? Now, I'm going to try to be brief here. The 45-degree angle that was pointed out has been from 2013. I bet you if we added more years, it would continue. The reality is the businesses are doing better. Sales tax receipts are up. Other items are up. Water is up. The only item that we control is the general fund spending. To the mayor's point, there have been no proposals provided. Last year, I could not get a second to propose cutting one less penny from a majority of the same people sitting here today. So there doesn't seem to be a real interest in cutting the spending. Member Patel, I'm just going to be really honest with you. I haven't heard anybody interested. I haven't heard anybody speak to the taxpayers' plight. But what I would tell you is this: if we increase the exemption, then by definition, we are reducing the assessed value that we can tax against. And in theory, if we go to some of these staff members, they would be willing to cut because they literally by law cannot go and collect those dollars and go and put them in the general fund. I had a member of the staff, a very senior member who has one of the largest budgets in the city, the fire chief, said that if he was asked, he would make a cut if he was asked. So it's not for lack of the staff members' willingness to do it. Member Epperson, I'm sorry, it's two times. City Manager Epperson has been willing to cut, but he needs direction. There needs to be 4 people that want to go do the cutting. The businesses have always found a way to thrive here. I believe in them. But I more importantly believe that the people who go to those businesses need relief. The water presentation that you saw showed almost, half $500 million improvements, 117 being issued this year. There is no relief. Everybody who pays water is going to pay 14% more expensive water for using the same water. I can't do anything about the water rates. We can do something about the general fund expenses, and that's my intent.
Just to remind everybody, we've hashed this out in June in a workshop, and then to Member Camcar's point, businesses pay more for water. They pay out the nose as compared to residents, and it's structurally that way. And adjusting the homestead exemption up, as we fully discussed in June, does the same thing. We'll discuss it again.
Very quick response. In that June meeting, there was not a discussion about water or water rates. At this meeting, there has not been one utterance of could we look to reduce the water rates or what we're doing on the debt, what we're financing. I have not heard one item. Maybe the mayor has heard it. Maybe somebody in the audience has. But there doesn't seem to be anybody concerned about the businesses paying high water rates. It doesn't appear to be. I haven't heard anything. Doesn't mean that it isn't there. Just nobody has spoken about their concerns about how much debt we're issuing for water.
I actually said none of us like paying a higher rate. I said that like 15 minutes ago. I said it 2, 3, or 4 times while I was talking. So, yeah, somebody has said we're concerned about everybody, everyone. That includes homeowners, that includes businesses, that includes our school districts, that includes our nonprofits, our churches, everybody else paying a higher rate. So I want to make sure that that's on the record. We are concerned about paying higher. At the same time, we have an aggressive CIP for a reason. I attempted, even on the large wastewater, to see how we could do that project differently to save some money, save some operating cost. It was a great exercise for our staff to go through to make sure that we're doing things the right way. So it had some benefits ultimately to make sure that we're doing that. So on the record, I don't think there's anybody up here that is happy that we have to raise rates to where we are. I don't think there's a single person happy with that. There's a reality of where we need to be. And so just also want to make sure most homeowners, the vast, vast, vast majority of homeowners have a 5/8 meter. There's a handful that have a little bit larger meter. You have a residential rate. As that meter size goes up to a 1 inch, to a 2 inch, to a 3 inch and above, your base rate goes up. So a business pays a lot, and you may use the same gallons, but your base rate's much higher. So there is a shift, there is a subsidy that businesses pay to help homeowners. And so as we walk through the exemptions, as we walk through that discussion, we've got to have the right discussion about what's right for our whole city, including the businesses. And I'm not saying that we don't change the exemption. I've said that from day one. I've also said, and you've agreed, that we probably shouldn't go from 2.5 to 20 in 1 year because of that. And so we should have some kind of a plan on how we walk through that. And that's what I hope we have in a holistic approach with our council, and we're not back here in June going, what do we do on the exemption?
Mayor,
Why
I want to.
on the chart?
Excuse me, Mayor?
Hey.
As a lot of the discussion seems to be about a potential exemption and where that could be, that's absolutely a great discussion for us to have, probably in October when it's posted as an agenda item. I think that there's part of that that goes with the item that's on tonight's agenda, but I fear we're getting far away from it, that my duty is to call us back to focus on the item for tonight,
It's a good
and not
comment.
the tax exemption.
Good comment, but also want to make sure others who have not spoken under this have the opportunity. I think everybody has.
I haven't.
And it's right, Mayor Pro Tem did have the mic next. Sorry, Ms. Kate. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. As far as the water issues that we have in our city, we're basically at a threshold where the age of our wastewater in 2 plants, if we don't do it, will turn into a Jackson, Mississippi. The consequence of that with wastewater, you go to flush the toilet and it's not going anywhere. They've put it off, and in the articles that I've read about it, they're at about $1 billion. And that's in a city that's equivalent to our size. They're about 150,000 people. So with that being said, we are taking it chunks at a time, and yes, it's not pleasant right now, but as our predecessors back, my grandparents' generation, when they came out of the war, they built roads, and they built roads to connect our country. And I'm not going to sit here in the city of Pearland and let our infrastructure fall apart to the point where we can't utilize it and live in a substandard city. So from the water side of it, that's one thing that's a necessity that we have to take care of. From the general fund side, when you get into homestead exemptions, when you do that, basically you push it off onto businesses. Ask New York, ask California why they're moving to Texas. This is cheaper. Valuations on our property are going up because we have more people moving into this state from other places because it's cheaper to live here than there. And until that stops, you're swimming upriver. If you want to push the tax burden from homeowners to businesses, there becomes a point where you'll push the business out. The end result is now you have nothing but residential. And no matter how high you go, you bear that brunt on residential. So you have to be very careful when you start pushing down that road, just saying, hey, I don't work here, I don't do anything but live here. So let's push that off onto the businesses because that's all that matters.
And to our legal counsel, let's start finishing this up.
No, I've got one more question. Chief Taylor, on the 1% that Member Camcar talked about, I'd like to get your response on the 1% that it spoke about that you were willing to give up.
Well, to be clear, thank you. To be clear on the 1%, whatever the direction of the council is a direction obviously we'll follow. But to arbitrarily cut 1% would hurt services to our community. So everything we have in our budget is based on needs, empirical data, not wants. And so what we have out there are the needs that we need to protect and serve the citizens that we have out there in our community. I'd also argue that once you give 1%, it exacerbates. So for instance, for us in the fire department, our initial requests were 6 firefighters, roughly 3 firefighters is $298,000. That's 1% of our budget. 3 of those firefighters weren't able to obtain, but through creative budgeting, we were allowed to utilize and obtain 3 firefighters based on our part-time accounts that we have utilizing those funds, making it a net zero add, another 1%, which the 1% we didn't get on that. So in my mind, we've really sacrificed 3% to get the 3 firefighters we are going to get, and we're happy to do that. But if we cut any more, it's going to take us more and more kicking the can down the road, as we spoke earlier about getting that caught up as we move forward. And I know that, speaking as myself as a director and being in the rooms with all the other directors, I know that we were directed by our city manager to keep our budget as flat as possible and base it on empirical needs. And I've watched everyone, as we talked about, roll their sleeves up and do the best they can to keep this budget flat, and also take into consideration the influx of inflation that we have based on the contractual obligations we have within our respective departments. That's where our raises are. That's where the increases are, but it's not nominal increases that we're asking for. It's increases that's based on the contracts that we have in place. And I think that to keep that where we are and keep it flush and provide the citizens the exceptional services that we do in all our departments to our citizens, I think we've done a magnificent job with that, working with our finance department.
Thank you, Chief Taylor. Also, Chief Spires, at that same meeting, you were asked to cut 1%. I'd like to get your feedback.
What he said, except for the need more firefighter part.
Thank you,
I think it just goes to say that we have a level of service here, and to remember Camcar's point, we do control that spending. We do control that discretionary part. So it comes down to level of service. How quickly do you want an officer at your house when you call? How quickly do you want an ambulance or a fire truck there? How quickly do you want somebody out at 3 a.m. if there's a problem on the ground and we have to get a public works professional out there quickly? How quickly do you want those types of things? Even in our parks, if you go to the rec center, you go and do certain things at our parks, and it's the level of service that's there. And one of the big things that we get pushed back often is customer service. And I think there's a big need here to increase our public service, and a lot of that is increasing our service level. And it's hard to increase the service level with the level of spending that we have. And so I think it's that balance between level of service and where we would like to be and what our citizens would like to see that really becomes the conflict when we have these discussions. And it's a great discussion. It's great questions, and everybody gets their thoughts on the line as we wrap up.
Just really quickly, thank you, Mayor. You mentioned earlier in your comments you hadn't received a proposal. Do we have an understanding that any proposals provided will get the light of day to be
You have the authority and the right to put forth, just like you have in years past.
Okay, so,
Just like you have there's supplementals, there's all that, so you have a right to.
all right, so we will.
Everybody has a right to judge it based
Sure.
on its merit.
Here's the thing. I've tried to be kind to Trent. I know he's dealing with a nuclear waste cleanup, and I've tried not to badger him, but I will be bringing at least one proposal. I don't anticipate more than that. I have heard the comments of, well, we don't have 6 months to review them, and then when they've provided, well, we don't have all the forever data. Well, we've only had the budget for 30 days anyway. So I do look forward to having a clear light of day discussion on that. And so thank you for that.
I would be sensitive to staff's time and element. I mean, when this, if you spring it to them on the same day as the budget, that's kind of hard to. That's kind of hard to get
No,
to.
fair. I'll bring one in the next week.
I mean, that's
and
to
I
be
don't-
fair. Yeah.
Fair enough. And the last thing, we had a discussion about the 2 staffers. Did we get any memos if those items were necessary? They were about roughly $200,000. Trying to get back to the topic. We're $200,000 in additional staff for this year.
Are you talking about on the enterprise side?
Correct.
The memo attached to this agenda item's got a full detailed
We have that. Okay.
information associated with that. Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Great discussion.
I did want to say something to Member Camcars about the water bill for business. When we look at the graph, the city of Pearland for residents, the water is right in the middle of other cities, but the business is at the far end of the high. And that doesn't make sense to me. Member Carbone said that he pays through the nose or through the ears. I can't remember which one he said. For water, pays through something. But he's an accountant. And so why is his water bill astronomical? I mean, he's not making tons of pasta or doing anything outrageous with water as an accountant. I don't understand why his water bill is
I said it goes
any more than mine at home.
It goes to meter size.
That doesn't. But that's
Where he offices, his office complex, if it's got something greater than a 5/8 meter, he's going to pay a larger charge than he would if he was in a house. And so that's the way a council 4, 5, 6 years ago decided to base the rates. And you're starting to see other cities move to volumetric rating. So I expect to see, as the city of Pearland is one of the highest on business, I expect if other cities start going that direction, you'll see us migrate more towards the middle, just like we have on residential. And as other cities around us continue to face the growth challenges and everything else, you'll see their residential rates start going up. It's just inevitable that they do that.
So Mayor,
great question.
When those rates, when we change that base rate to be meter-based size, the purpose behind that and the kind of the philosophy behind that is that for businesses that have to have larger meters, we've got to have more capacity in the system. And so that's wastewater capacity, that's water capacity at our plants, because they do have the ability to take that much more water. So that's what was behind that. When that was initially adopted, basically we used the mathematical calculation for how much additional water will come through that larger meter compared to a 5/8 inch meter, and used a multiplier to get to the base rate for those larger meters. Initially, the council adopted that at about, we had a factor in there where it brought that down. And then a couple of years later, when we were looking at some pretty significant rate pressures, we went ahead and moved that up even further. So it's based on the additional water capacity and wastewater capacity we have to serve those larger users. Whether they use it or not, we have to have the capacity to serve them.
And all I know, with another 4 or 5 million people that'll move into this greater Houston area over the next 25 years, other locations around the greater Houston area are going to be having these same growth conversations and pressures that we are. So we're not alone in it. I'm not poor boying, me too, sorry me, all that kind of stuff. It's just, it is what it is. And a lot of people are moving to our state. A lot of people are being birthed here. We'll have over 100,000 births in the greater Houston area this year. So just, think about that each and every year. So it's just more and more people that are going to live here, school infrastructure, roads, and the like that's going to be needed in the greater Houston area over the next 25, 30 years. So last call for questions. I don't see anybody moving that direction. Trent, follow up.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll just close things out. There should have been one more slide.
Nope.
Oh, I thought we had the schedule moving forward.
Oh.
We leave that out. So the schedule moving forward is we will have on September 11th, we will have our budget public hearing. We will have the first reading of our budget, first reading of our tax rate, and then we will follow that up on September 25th with our public hearing on our tax rate, as well as our second reading on the budget and second reading on the tax rate. And so that'll wrap up our budget season. So appreciate all the time with the council and mayor going through the budget and getting through all the questions, and look forward to September. Thank you.
Good stuff. So we'll move forward in our agenda. Matters removed from consent agenda. We took the one right on the heels of it. Other business, there was none. Mayor, council issues for council discussion, there is none. So we'll move to adjournment at 9:26.
Hi, I'm Firefighter Pecknold with the Pearland Fire Department.
And I'm Officer Finch with the Pearland Police Department. Being that both the police and the fire departments work many events together in the city of Pearland, today we have joined forces to go over some basic helmet and bike safety tips.
Your helmet is very important and should be worn each and every time you ride your bike. Your helmet is designed to protect your head in the event you fall off your bike. And these are the parts of your helmet: shell, vents, visor, chin strap, molding, padding, ratchet. And here's how to make sure your helmet fits properly.
Put the helmet on your head and look up. You should see the bottom rim of the helmet. Make sure that the straps form a V under your ears when the chin strap is buckled. The chin strap should be a little tight but comfortable. Open your mouth